Hi, I'm Catherine Versillo. I am a writer, an artist, and a researcher exploring the complicated relationship between health and creativity. When I talk about health, I am referring to all kinds of health and circumstance. So, physical health, mental health, psychological, emotional, um, social, financial, systemic, things inside you, things outside you, all the things that are impacting you as a human. And I believe these impact us creatively in many ways. Over the course of time, I have found that they tend to impact us across 6 different areas of creativity: creative process, content, medium, productivity, identity, and business. I explore this through a framework I have created called Creative Health Cartography. I have developed a workbook that helps you look at patterns of how your health is impacting your creativity in these different areas. This is not to fix you. This is not to give you answers. It's to help you figure out your own patterns so that you can find the answers that work for you. So, this is the Create Me Free podcast. It is episode 4. I feel like I'm starting to get the hang of what I want to do here. Podcasting is very new for me. I've been a writer and an online writer for a very, very long time. I have done some things on video over time, but very little, and I certainly haven't done officially a podcast. So this is new. It's being hosted on Substack. I run a Substack called createmefree.substack.com. Well, it's called Create Me Free, but that's the where you find it. I write there all about this same topic, about where health and art intersect. And the podcast has some free episodes, and then it has some paid episodes. The way you pay for them is you become a paid subscriber to Substack. Ideally at the annual, you sign up annually, and then you get a bunch of perks for doing that. And you can find out all that information on the Substack. I do offer 1 episode free per month, but I've done a lot of stuff for free over time in my life. And I'm at the stage of my career where I don't want to do everything for free. I want to give as much back as I can. I also need to make a living. So if you like this podcast, if it's feeling good to you, I appreciate you for being here. What I'm doing in this podcast is I'm sharing with you about my framework by going through the Creative Health Cartography workbook step by step. I'm not doing the entire workbook, but I am going through each section of the workbook. The first section is creative process. So this is how we work. It's from inspiration and the preparing of doing something creative to the actual doing of the something creative to the sharing of the something creative. It's the entire arc of the process of how we create. Now, create and work, these mean different things to different people. I consider myself mostly a writer. I'm also a fiber artist. I consider myself an entrepreneur, multi-hyphenate, et cetera, et cetera. I tend to just think of myself as someone who lives creatively. So for me, when I think about creative process, I'm not necessarily thinking about a specific project. Although lately, the creative health cartography is where my creative energy is focused. I offer, in addition to the Substack and the podcast and the workbook, I offer one-to-one mapping and navigation services where I help you figure out your own patterns and work through things. I have a master's degree in psychology. I am not a licensed therapist, so this is not therapy, but it functions in much the same way with 1-hour sessions where we work together to help you figure out what's potentially blocking you creatively and what you want to do about it. So I come from a perspective that health impacts creativity in many different ways. That's neither bad nor good. It just is. Sometimes it feels like it's serving us and sometimes it doesn't. With your own patterns, you can find out the ways it impacts you, the adaptations that you have made that work for you. So if your health is impacting your energy and that means that you've had to change the amount of time you spend working on creative things or the way that you work on them or the breaks that you take, that's an adaptation that you've made that might be working for you. You can also see what's not working for you. A lot of times what's not working for us is forcing ourselves to do something, do a process we think is the right creative process. We think we should. We've been told we should. Trying to force ourselves into something that doesn't actually work for our health. or the narrative that we have around it. So shaming ourselves for not creating in a way we think we should, whether that's not creating enough or not, whatever. In many ways we shame ourselves. I don't want you to shame yourself. I want you to learn to be gentle with yourself and do what supports your health and your creativity. And the first step in that is just seeing your patterns. So, in episode 2, I gave you an overview of the creative process, what it means, what the process is, kind of the foundation of that. And then in episode 3, I worked through some of the basic questions. Each chapter of the workbook has a little bit questions to start with. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into actual exercises. So these are longer engaged activities that are offered throughout the workbook to work on different aspects of how health is impacting creativity. Anything I offer, take what works for you, leave what doesn't work for you. Come back to something if you think it will work for you later, if you remember it. You don't have to work through the workbook from beginning to end. I'm working through it that way, partly because I work that way, partly because that's the frame of the way that I'm decided to set up this podcast. But each of the 6 sections, so how health impacts creative process is one section, materials or medium is another section, content is another section. Each of these sections has exercises, explorations to try. So in this section, there are 5-ish exercises. I say ish because each section has a try this week, which is kind of a simpler things. I shouldn't say simple. It's a thing you can do during the week to just see how it sits with you. And each one also has with a witness. So this is working with someone else who you trust and usually just sharing something that you've learned from the week with them. It's a little more specific than that, but that's the general. So all of them have those 2. And then there's 3 other exercises in the creative process section. There is the threshold scan, which is a somatic exercise, which is the one I'm going to demonstrate today. And then there's mapping your process and the permission slip. I have notes here. I do not have a script, so I'm sharing this work kind of raw, kind of messy, kind of imperfect. I don't think we need to be perfect to share ourselves with others. I do prepare, I do plan, I do try, but I didn't want to work from a script for a lot of reasons, but mostly because I know that I tend to then perform. I probably still do that a little bit, but it's harder to do when I don't have a script and I'm just like impromptu talking to you. We tend to have stories that we tell ourselves and tell about ourselves to others. And those stories can be true, but not complete usually. So when people ask me to talk about my creative health, they ask, what do you do? I write about whatever. I tell the story of how depression impacted my creativity, and that led to me exploring how crochet could help me. And then that led to, I have a whole story. This is the story. However, the more times I repeat that story, the further away I get from feeling how true it is. Whereas if I just try to do this on camera, then there's hopefully the chance that you'll kind of get to see in action the process of messily figuring out how your health is impacting your creativity and knowing that it doesn't have to look any specific way. You'll do what's right for you. So I'm going to talk about these other exercises before I actually share the threshold scan with you. So I wanted to find the notes that I made on those. So mapping, one of them is mapping the process. And this is honestly one of my very, very, very favorites. And the reason is because, so I've gotten super into mapping. So the framework that I'm using is what I call creative health cartography. And the reason that I've been working with the framework of cartography is because I find that there's many different ways that we can visually map where we are and where we want to be and what's blocking us in between, and figuring out how we want to navigate around what's blocking us to get to where we want to be. and or just celebrating where we are, seeing, oh, this is where I am on the creative health map. That's not so bad. I do this through workshops that are kind of collage based with some prompts and storytelling. I do this through, for myself, I do this with clients one-to-one. I offer creative mapping where I identify patterns for you and create a map for you. I do that both through AI generation, which is much more affordable because it's much quicker and uses less of my own resources. But I also do have a non-AI mapping, hand-done map that is on the pricier side for people who want the handmade. So I offer mapping that way. I tend to nerd out about things, and I got really interested in learning about cartography and maps and what they mean, and the ways that we can subvert them. So obviously there's problematic history with the concept of discovering a continent and mapping it. But there's also artists and theorists and others, activists, who have subverted what the map can look like and and what it can represent. And so I've just gotten super into that history, into the design of maps. So mapping your process, honestly. So this isn't, it's just one way of mapping, but it's basically you get a large piece of paper and you're going to draw your creative process. So I left this really open. Do you want to do a flow chart? Do you want to do what looks like a more traditional map? Do what works for you. And I ask you to include these different things. What are the false starts of your process? What's the part where you usually get stuck? What are the detours? And then I ask you to label the parts that are affected by health. And we look at the map and we figure out the patterns. And there's more to it than that, but that's one of the exercises in the book that you can take further. And it, for me, helps me better understand the process in a different way because I'm seeing it visually. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to tell you about that. I talk about how just looking at the question itself tends to get you somewhere. I don't want to go into this since this is not the exercise that I'm actually doing on camera. But you get to look at your process through this way. And at some point, maybe I'll do this on camera. The other exercise in the book is the permission slip. I think actually all the chapters, if I remember correctly, have some kind of permission slip. But for this one, so I've asked you create a physical object, any medium, any size, whatever works for you. You make an object that is telling yourself that you give yourself permission to have the process you actually have. I hereby give myself permission to have the process I actually have, not the one I think I should have, not the one I used to have, not the one I wish I had. Not just having, I can have the process that just is what I have, and there's nothing wrong with it, and I don't need to change it, or I can change it by choice in the ways that work for me. But it is what it is. So that's another exercise developed a little bit further in the book. So now the one that we're going to go through is the threshold scan. And I'm actually a little nervous about doing a somatic exercise as one of the first exercises I do on this podcast. So first of all, this is on video, but some people are only listening to it audio. So it feels a little weird to do a somatic exercise on just audio, although you don't actually have to see it. There's not really anything to see for this, but just naming that feels a little weird to me. And also because I've done a lot of stuff to become a more embodied person and be in touch with my body. I think the body can give us tons of information that is useful for our health and creativity. But I am someone who, for various reasons, has lived mostly in my head. Hypervigilance. There's a bunch of reasons that I learned to live in my head and not in my body. I'm learning to live in my body, but it doesn't feel like an area of expertise for me. It doesn't feel that comfortable. So to show a somatic exercise rooted in the body just feels a little weird. Like some other professional person should be doing that. But this is an exercise I have done before. Um, so it's called the threshold scan. I'm going to just read the exercise to you so that you know what it is, and then I'm going to try to sit with it and do it. Um, let's see. I made a list of the theoretical grounding for this exercise. I'm gonna give you that at the end. So if you're interested in theory is coming at the end. It'll tell you kind of how this exercise got developed, why it works the way that it does. But okay, so the exercise is there's a moment right before you begin your creative work that we can call a threshold. And most of us, myself included, often don't notice this threshold. Um, some people are really good at developing a ritual for starting their creative work. So I've done a lot of work with people in crochet about setting a ritual that usually is rooted in the senses. So as you sit down to crochet, um, you might light a candle or use some incense or something to create a specific scent. You might have a favorite, like cup of coffee or tea that gives you taste, also warmth. And then you might sit down and actually like tactile notice, pay attention to, oh, this is the yarn and this is how it feels, getting into your body. If you have those kind of rituals, then you might notice the threshold um, of starting your creative work more intentionally. Most of us sit down and do our work, I think, and don't necessarily think, oh, I'm at a creative threshold. But when we can slow down and sit at that threshold and just kind of listen, I think it can help us better understand our creative process, be better in tune with what really is and isn't going to work for us that day. So what the exercise is sit in the place where you create. I am in one of the places I create. This is my office craft room place where I do a lot of my computer stuff. It's also the place where I store all my yarn and collage things and things I don't want my dogs to touch because it's the only room in the house that the dogs don't come in. But it's actually not where I usually crochet. So this is where I do my work, my computer work and writing. So sit in the place where you create. Have your materials or tools nearby, but do not start working yet. But you know that you're going to start working. You're telling your body this. We're on the threshold of beginning to create. Close your eyes. Notice what's happening in your body right now. There was a moment you were not creating. You're going to be creating. You're in the threshold. What is happening in your body? It's called the scan because you're just going to scan your body. You're going to scan from your feet to the top of your head, or from your head to your toes if you prefer that way. It doesn't actually probably matter, but from your feet to the top of your head. So you're just looking at your feet, your legs, your hips, all the way up to the top of your head, scan. And what you're scanning for is what do you feel? And trying to give a name that actually expresses to yourself what it really feels like. So, is there tension? Is there tightness? Is there openness? Is there ache? Maybe you don't feel anything. Maybe you can't tap into this. Maybe you feel numb. Maybe you um, keep getting distracted because you can't be in your body and the distraction is frustrating. Try to come back in the body and see what you feel. Do you feel cold? Do you feel hot? Um, just what's happening in your body. And now you're in that place. You know where your body's at. You know that you're going to go into your creative work. Ask yourself, ask your body, what does my body need in order to cross this creative threshold today? We tend to ask, what does your schedule need? What do people need from you? What needs to get done today? I think I even talked in a previous episode about how my creative process on a good day is making a list of getting things done and getting them done, or something similar to that. We tend to go into what do I need to do today? That's not what you want, what I'm asking you to do here. I'm asking you to say, you're going to begin creating creative work. You're in this threshold. What does my body need in order to cross this threshold today? Maybe it needs some examples. 2 minutes of silence. Maybe it needs to move. Maybe it needs a smaller threshold or a smaller entry point, not a smaller threshold. Well, anyway. So maybe I'm saying that I'm gonna work on writing an essay, but maybe in order to actually relax, my body needs to know that it doesn't have to get that done today. It's just going to write a sentence. That's a smaller entry point. Maybe you don't need to cross today. You're in this place, your body's telling you something. What is it telling you? I suggest that you do the scans 3 times over the course of a week, and that helps give you an idea of the patterns of how you feel on different days, doing different kinds of creative work. The more, it's just more information. Everything that you're doing here is getting information about how health and experience are impacting your creativity. And the more times you do an exercise, the more information you have. It's also a way to maybe stop tricking yourself, because I know for me, like I can do the exercise and I do a really surface level thing. If I do the exercise again and again and again, at some point it tips and I just tap into something else. So that's what I recommend. So I guess I will just try to do this exercise. I'm going to try to just do this exercise on camera for a minute. So I guess this one's kind of hard to do as a podcast, but okay. So I'm not creating right now, which is hard to say because I am creating. I'm doing this podcast, but let's say the next thing I'm going to create. Well, I'm going to take the transcript from this podcast and I'm going to try to turn it into a post. So I'm going to try to do something a little creative there. That's the next creative thing. So I'm not doing that yet. I'm currently in this. I'm going to kind of close my eyes and scan. So I'm sitting cross-legged. Most times when you do these exercises, you're asked to ground your feet on the floor. I'm very short and I don't touch the floor easily. So I'm sitting cross-legged, but so my feet feel cold, actually, is the first thing I feel. And because they're cold, they're kind of not numb, but a little tingly, maybe. I don't really feel anything in my legs, which I hate saying that because I know that I don't know, because I wish I was different. I wish I was a more embodied person and could feel everything. They don't feel tight. They don't feel anything at this moment. But my stomach feels nervous. It feels butterfly-y, which I'm sure is because I'm trying to do something on camera that feels really awkward. But I feel a little butterfly, a little jittery, a little, shaky. It feels shaky, and that's all the way in my stomach and up into my chest. And my arms. My arms also, like my hands actually feel a little shaky. My hands don't feel too cold though. So really just my feet feel cold. Some of my body feel a little jittery, feel a little short of breath. So every time I do something in my body, I tend to immediately go into my mind about it. So immediately I was like, well, am I short of breath because I'm nervous and anxious? Am I short of breath because allergies have been really bad and I've just been short of breath? My mind totally went to like, did I use my inhaler today? It's my mind. My mind talks and talks and talks. Okay. In the body, Catherine. Well, I just adjusted my shirt because it was feeling a little tight on one side. My neck hurts a little bit. I carry a lot of tension. I'm carrying a lot of tension in my shoulders. My cheeks feel buzzy, which is a little weird. And I wouldn't say I feel the top of my head. So I feel my center a lot, and I can feel my very far extremity, my hands and my feet, but not so much my legs and my arms. So that's where I am. And ask yourself, what does your body need in order to cross this threshold today? Well, again, it's really, it feels a little, not fake, not inauthentic, but it feels, it's not performative because I'm being honest, but it's staged a little bit because I'm not, because I'm already doing the creative thing, which is the podcast, right? But what do I need to feel really good about going into the next part of it? I probably need some deep breaths. I do feel like my breathing's really tight, and I definitely need some water. I actually have some water sitting here that I'm going to sip in a second. And then my body needs to kind of get the bones of the work out really quick, and then I actually probably just need to take a break. It's getting towards the end of the day. I may not do the rest of it until tomorrow. So kind of the answer is I'm on the threshold of creating this next thing. My body needs a little water and breathing, and possibly not to do too much more today. So that's an example. That's an example of one way you can use an exercise, a somatic exercise, to tap into what your body might know. I'd like to point out that I'm not, well, first I'd like to say that there are times when you don't want to go into your body. So, if you have trauma and you know that being in your body doesn't feel safe, I certainly wouldn't do exercises. I should have said this at the beginning, huh? I wouldn't do exercises that take you into your body, but without the necessary support. But also, now I lost my train of thought because I'm overthinking that I should have mentioned that before. What I was going to say was, with the somatic exercises, I have tried to suggest things that aren't as likely to provoke traumatic triggering things. So I'm not asking you to go deep in your body and ask your body, you should go as deep or as far as feels comfortable to you at this time. So for me, that quick scan, I think I'm actually going to try to do this exercise tomorrow before I start my day and see what's different for me, which will be really interesting to see. But for me, I'd feel like it went into my body and my body has lots of information for me, but I'm not lingering there because that doesn't feel comfortable for me. So I'm getting the information, putting it down now. If I did that tomorrow and I do that the next day and I do that the next day, I might get a lot more information about my creative process. So part of this is just letting me know where I'm at right now. Mapping is, where are you right now? Where I'm at right now is I feel a little nervous, which is interesting because I didn't realize that I'm nervous doing this podcast, honestly, until I can feel it in my chest. So that's an interesting thing for me to realize. I was obviously pushing through something there. So that's interesting. So that's new knowledge for me from my body. But not like crazy nervous. Like, it's not that I can't breathe. It's just a little challenging. Yeah. So your body has information about your creative process. This one is designed to kind of show you where you're at before you start something and get in touch with what you need in order to do that work. There's many different ways of approaching that, but that's what this one kind of starts us at. So before I end, I wanted to give you a little bit of the theory and background of kind of the underlying foundational stuff that leads to this exercise. So I do have notes on this because my brain is not going to remember. I have the worst memory, you guys. I take tons of pictures and make tons of notes because I do not remember. I'm think I will not remember anything. I actually do remember some things, but my memory is not so good. So, okay, I'm going to give you four different theorists per people whose work kind of forms the foundation here. So Antonio Damasio, he is Portuguese-American neuroscientist who spent his career studying the relationship between emotion and the body and how we make decisions. So he did work on somatic markers. He has the somatic marker hypothesis that argues that the body is continuously providing input to every decision the mind makes. So you get physical signs that register emotional information as bodily states, and you don't necessarily realize that's happening, but it is happening. So you don't just decide I'm going to do creative work and do it. Before the decision, your body has already started running an assessment, usually below conscious awareness, of what creative work means to you, what the creative process is, what it costs you, what it might require today. It all registers in your body as a felt sense. The exercise, in theory at least, helps you come into the moment and feel it. So sometimes creative process is blocked because we are trying to avoid doing something that is going to trigger uncomfortable feelings. And it's a protective mechanism. Sometimes we have to listen to it. Other times, just knowing that that's what's going on can help us push past it. The point really is just knowing that that's happening gives us more power and agency in terms of what we want to do with it. So if we can slow down in the creative process and recognize in the body, oh, wow, I feel really agitated. I feel really, I guess agitation can be a body state, but I feel really shaky and tense and stressed. And obviously something about going into this work is like not feeling good to me. Then that can help us identify that something is triggering us and we want to do something about it before we begin the creative work. So instead of avoiding the creative work, we are acknowledging that something else needs to happen for the body to be in a safe enough state to go into that work. Sometimes I use trauma as an example because it comes up so much for me and for a lot of the people I work with, but it might not be that. It could be something as simple and common as hunger or sleep. I want to go, I'm going to creative workshop. It starts at 1:00. I get there and I'm like all lightheaded and weird. Why? Because I didn't eat. All I need to do is eat, then I can do the workshop. Just an example. If you're in your body, then you remember, oh, my body needed to eat, or it needs to be warmer, or whatever it is. So the somatic markers, that's what that's about. What else did I write about it here? The reason Damasio's work matters here is that it pushed back with neurological evidence against the long Western tradition of treating reason and emotion as separate systems. So, and reason was seen as higher, as more valuable, and this is also very gendered. Men are logical and women are emotional, and logical wins or whatever. It's an old way of thinking that is not useful. And how Damasio came to this, he studied patients who had damage to specific brain regions involved with emotional processing. He found that those patients who appeared cognitively intact and could reason about complex problems made consistently poor decisions. So they didn't have the emotional processing part. They did have the complex logical reasoning part, but they were making bad decisions. This seems counterintuitive, but if you embrace somatic marker theory, it says that they had lost access to the somatic experience of the emotion. So they're just going on reason, and that's not enough. That's actually not accurate, not enough information. You need to know the emotional and body side that informs the decision. I think I'm saying that right. So again, we can decide rationally that we're going to do creative work, or we can decide rationally we're going to do a specific type of creative work today. I am going to end this podcast and do the notes that I was talking about. But that decision is really informed by all of my emotions and somatic stuff around that. So how I can do it, if I can do it, what that looks like, what that turns out to be, is impacted by emotion and body. And so tuning in at that creative threshold helps me do the work better because I checked out that information. So, Damasio, number one. The second theory, oh, you'll hear me talk about this one a lot. This was like my favorite theory that I learned, which is window of tolerance. I learned it in a trauma class when I was doing my psychology degree. It comes from Daniel Siegel. Siegel, yeah. Psychiatrist. But basically, the window of tolerance says that we have a nervous system. Let me say the way it's actually phrased. The window of tolerance is the range of nervous system arousal within which a person can access their full cognitive, emotional, and physical capabilities or capacities. Same. So you have a window. It can be big, it can be small. It's different for different people. Lots of different things affect it. But you have a window, and within that window, your nervous system is able to access all of those things: cognitive, emotional, physical. You can go outside the window in one of two directions. You can go into hyperarousal. You've gone outside of your window, you're anxious, you're panicking, you're way up here, you're not accessing your full emotions or capabilities because you're now acting from anxiety. You can go in the other direction, which is hypoarousal, which I tend to think of as depression for myself, but any kind of shutdown, if you're dissociating, that's hypoarousal. You're going into, and so obviously if you're doing those things, you're not accessing your full creative ability. In order to do your best full creative work that feels authentically you, you have to be inside that window. Like I said, lots of things impact the window. The window can become smaller over time, or because of certain, like when you're wrapped up in a lot of grief, or you are physically dealing with a lot of illness, or you've just experienced a trauma, you might have a small window. Whereas you might have a larger window in times that feel relatively healthy. But you have a window, and when you go out of it, all kinds of things happen. This is not just about creativity. I'll be talking about it through the lens of creativity, but there's just a lot of other things that we can't do when we're outside of the window of tolerance. For me, I can't think, like which is related to creativity, but I can't think clearly. I get brain fog in either state. Then I make decisions off of like weird things, or I don't know. I can't think clearly. So let's see. You have probably had the experience of trying to do creative work in a state that you discovered later was outside your window. So you sat down, you tried to do something, nothing came. It felt like you were putting in all kinds of effort, but nothing was happening. If we look at that through the lens of window of tolerance, your nervous system may have been outside the range that allows the kind of openness that allows the work to happen. And then it's possible you weren't able to do the work, so then you're judging yourself, you're stressing yourself out, you're oh my god, I'm so like, why can't I do the work? I need to do the work, there's a deadline, or I'm not good at this, why am I even doing this? Whatever the story is you're telling yourself takes you further outside the window of tolerance, which makes it harder to do the work. If you're trying to operate from a state that you can't actually operate at your full capacity, you're not going to get there by doing the same thing over and over and berating yourself about it. So what you need to do, what you can do, is bring yourself back into the window of tolerance. Now, for trauma, I mostly know this through the lens of grounding and somatic stuff, bringing yourself back to the breath, bringing yourself back to the body. But in creative work, it can also mean other things. It can be putting away all the detailed creative work and doing something else. So in crochet, it could mean not doing any intricate patterns, but really just going to a repetitive stitch, bringing your body back. Then you can do something creative after with your crochet. With visual art, it might be like doodling, Zentangles, things that bring you back into the window. So it's coming back into your body, but just coming back into a state of calm, a state where you're not anxious, you're not panicking, you're not dissociating, you're not freezing, you're You're not in fight or flight, you're not in freeze, you're just okay. So whatever it takes to do that, whether that's something that's part of your creative world, like drawing or crochet, or something completely different, breathing, dancing, talking to a friend. This is foundational to the threshold scan in that sometimes what you're going to realize as you're doing the scan is I am not in my window. The better you get to know your body, the better you know if you're in the window or not. If you realize you're not in the window or you're close to being outside the window, then you can do something to bring yourself back before you cross the threshold into the creative work. So that is theorist 2. 3 is polyvagal theory. I talk about this one a lot. I recently read that now people aren't as into this theory, or there's some question about this theory. I'm not sure, but it made sense to me when I learned it. It essentially says that our autonomic nervous system has 3 different states. It's the ventral vagal state, which is associated with safety, social engagement, and openness. The sympathetic state, which is related to fight or flight, and the dorsal vagal state, which is related to shutdown. I'm not explaining this very well. There's more to it than that, but essentially there's these 3 states. It kind of reminds me of the window of tolerance also, but it's about specifically our autonomic nervous system. And you operate creatively mostly in the ventral vagal state. So if you're in fight or flight or you're in shutdown, again, you need to come back in your nervous system. So that's related to like nervous system exercises, breathing. If those states resonate, you can identify which state you're in by when you're doing the threshold scan. And the 4th piece of research is Anne Graybiel, who did research on habit and ritual. She is a neuroscientist at MIT whose work on the basal ganglia has shown that habits and rituals function as chunking mechanisms. They take a series of separate decisions and actions and compress them into a single automatic sequence, which reduces cognitive load. So for artists whose cognitive and emotional resources are already stressed, people with chronic illness, people dealing with things, if that's already stressed, then doing a reliable creative ritual helps you. It's kind of it's a neurological way of reducing what it takes to get into the work. So how this relates is the threshold scan becomes a ritual. So you do it every time that you're going to start creative work, and it reduces the cognitive load because it's become a ritual. And so it makes it, I hope I'm saying this right, it makes it easier to enter the work because you have reduced the number of steps, essentially. You've made it more automatic. And so now you kind of know, your body knows, okay, and now I'm going into the work. I did my scan, I'm going into the work. Creating other rituals will do the same thing. Talked about other rituals earlier. So those are the 4 theories that kind of underlie this. There's also lots of others. Like I said, I read a lot. I study a lot. I'm kind of nerdy. And so I a lot of times incorporate theories and ideas from all kinds of places and don't always remember where they came from. But those are some of the big ones that I know underlie the threshold scan specifically. I just want to look through my notes to see if there's anything else I wanted to say before I wrap up this episode, which I believe we're on episode 4. We're exploring creative process. So no, I don't think there was anything else. I think I was going to end with theory. There's going to be more theory in the next episode, so that one's going to kind of be rich in theory, but also in art history. So I have spent a lot of time learning about different artists throughout history and how health and creativity intersected for them. My most recent book before the workbook was called The Artist's Mind, and I produced that in conjunction with Sartle, which was an art history website and business. And I looked at the work completed by different famous artists, and this was, I was looking mostly at mental health, but I find that looking through the lens of art history also gives us a different perspective. Well, it gives us more than the theory gives us because it's more relatable, right? Like I can talk theory all the time, but stories about people are much more relatable. So there's that. But also, if you know that famous artists who had art careers, creative lifetimes, also lived with all of this stuff, I think it makes it easier for me. It makes it easier to be gentle on myself, to recognize that there's not some perfect way of living a creative life, of doing things creatively. So artists that I adore and respect who have dealt with these things, it's not like they had some secret that they overcame whatever. It's that they figured out ways that worked for them, adaptations that worked for them, and that's what the goal of all of this work that I'm talking about is. Okay. I hope that that was useful in some way. I hope that I'm starting to get into a rhythm here. And I hope that you're enjoying the Create Me Free podcast. Again, I'm Catherine Versillo. You can find my work at createmefree.substack.com. And I will talk to you next week.